After the tone, please record your name. Has joined the conference.
Okay, I think that's the WebEx recording agent, so I think we're live.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this meeting and giving your time to discuss the Viper Lite, my own concepts. I have a very brief agenda to go through it. First, I will be talking about why vPool are complex, and then what is causing the vPlex complexity, and then how we can reduce the vPool complexity, feasibility, and solution. And in the end, I will be going through the demo, and whatever concept I have shared in this PPT, I will be demoing the same through a full working demo. So it will be related to vPlex multi-site volume creation, followed by question and answer. So let's start. The first thing.
So hold on 1 second, Manoj. So you're not planning to talk about the orchestration piece at all during this, or?
No, it's more than that. Basically, it's a Viper Lite, and orchestration service is one of the components of that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So first, starting with we did analysis and find why vPool are complex. So at a high level, vPool has started with a very good concept, but over a period of time, the vPool has become a multi-purpose complex concept with unrelated functionality. If you see here that it has a multiple dimension of the vPool, but first is called the class of service, which basically, if I have to see what is a class of service we are doing, we are just mapping the array characteristics into that. Second comes to the placement, where we are trying to do pooling of resources and matching of resources to do some sort of a finding the same characteristics of the arrays and keeping it in a pool. Third part is related to topology. So when we are doing some sort of a complex operation like a vPlex volume creation or recover point or something other, which needs a lot of related entity details and relationship, we call it topology, and it's also part of our vPool. And fourth part, I say the expense, which means that the operations when we create the resource and when we do operations on those resources, those are called some sort of a compression, decompression, deduplication. So these all are things to take. These are all actions we do on the created resources onto system. And today, if I see vPool is complex because these are all embedded into one single concept called vPool. So going back to that, because of this complexity, what are the implications? If I remember correctly, that when vPool was started, it was assumed to be a very good concept of the class of service. But today, it's no longer an abstract entity. It's tightly coupled with the array. Rather, it is being used today to define the feature of the arrays rather than the class of service. We do define compression, deduplication, or any other such type of thing within the vPool. So that's why it becomes a tight coupled with the array. Second part is the static binding of the physical resources. It has, when we create the vPool, basically we are binding all the resources statically, and it has lost the flexibility over a period of time, because once you have defined your vPool, I can't change those characteristics over a period of time. And that is causing the vPool sprawling, means for each and every type of operation, we may have to create a new vPool and then a new type of issues which is not known into the storage world. We call it a vpool migration. I think people get confused when we talk about vpool migration. So going forward, then we find out, okay, fine, why vpool is getting complex, even in spite of we are doing so much. So we come up with, what is causing the vpool complexity, and we found that the architecture of Viper today is, looks like what is there into the right side, and I say that, it's very intelligent at the core and it does everything, and dumb at the edge. Means at the edge, this portion is the edge and this portion is the core. So we see that that is not doing anything into the higher level services, but doing everything into the lower level services, which is called the controller layer. And because of that, what is happening that vpool has become some sort of a global scope entity. So overreaching of vpool scope across the pyramid, because at each and every place we have to use the different a dimension of the vpool, and that's what I think the vpool is complex, and this complexity over a period of time will continue to grow if we continue this way. So what is the architecture implications? First thing is lot separation of the concern between physical and logical entities. But for me, that vpool VRA, these are the logical entities, and as a design concept, I always like to keep separation between the logical and physical world. And it happens, you look at any of the cloud stack or any of the enterprise grade architecture, there is a separation of concern between the different entities. But in our case, because of this, it is vpool VRA tightly coupled with every part of the controller, API, and other part of our controller code. We are not able to provide the day zero support for adding new features because of this, global scope. If I have to add a small single feature, I have to put an effort in each and every layer of my stack, and that's why I'm not able to support the new feature as fast as possible. Inflexible placement logic, it's tightly coupled with vpool VRA. We all know it. Our placement logic is embedded into the code, and difficult to manage the mismatch of the data between real versus actual world. Again, I'm saying we have talking about this for a long time, but within this architecture, it seems that, if I have to manage this mismatch of data, I have to do something into the controller only. And that's where, because there the action is happening, it will be definitely very difficult to manage that. Enforced multi-purpose complex vpool concept. Again, I'm saying that, we are enforced, this vpool which has become complexity, it is enforced upon us because of this architecture, not because of the reason that we don't understand that it has to be separate. Because each layer uses the different personality of the vpool, and our controller workflows are inflexible, and they are tied to the coarse grain vpool definition. I'm talking about taking the example of vplex workflow, which is very complex, but it is also part of that. Locking and concurrency issues, again, if we are handling at the controller layer where the action is happening, we'll have a difficulty to manage this locking and concurrency. We can manage it at the higher level, it will be much easier because visibility is more. And adding new feature is cumbersome. That's what I. So this is my implications. There may be more, but going forward, I will say that how we can reduce the Viper complexity. I think, having said that, if we have to really solve this problem from the root, I think we have to have a vpool simplification, which is core class of service concept. So earlier vpool definition has a multifaceted attributes. We have to just reduce it to the simple class of service concept, and we have to invert our architecture. We have to invert the architecture pyramid, and it looks like this, where the controller layer becomes very thin, based on the access layer and then the service layer. And the red arrow which I'm showing here, that the vpool scope has to be localized. It means that earlier the vpool scope was global. It is going down the pyramid. We have to restrict it right up to the service layers, not beyond that. And it's very complex when I say that when it has to be gradually transitioned to reduce the vpool complexity. The things will not happen just over a period of time. It will take its own course of action. So how we can achieve that, I think I am going to talk about that. And as again I will say that the concept which we'll be talking, we have done a feasibility analysis with a POC, and some of the concepts which I have talked about here, I'll be demoing it in my for the vpool software. So going forward, I think, as I have said that a class of service is a concept, I think I will go further to define what is actually a class of service. We are actually not doing the class of service. Class of service for a service-oriented architecture is a core concept. Rather, it's a concept of a service nature, and all the service provider adopt it. I know Ben and Tom, you all are networking background, and you know that in the class of service is very well implemented into the networking, and the concept has evolved from there. If I say that the concept of the class of service is to provide the differential services, that's all. That somehow we want to differentiate the services that are, let's call it platinum, let's call it gold, silver, and all those things. And it's a concept, and this concept has to be applied to the different domains. So in the storage domain, this may look different. In networking domain, it could look different. In application domain, it could look different. But the concept remains same, and that says that we have to provide the differential services. And if I look at it, this concept is not just for the engineering, rather it has a bigger impact onto the business side. So if I look at it, the class of service somehow into the directly related to business, and people say into the business term, into the service level SLAs. What is that called? A service level. And the another part, once you have that SLAs, they can definitely map to the chargeback, and that's where the difference is. For a better service, you pay more. For normal service, you pay less. So this is the business part of it. But at the other part, which is I call it the operation part, the class of service should map to two major characteristics. One is called the classification, another is called the characterization. So classification is same thing, something similar to what we are creating a pool of the resources. And the characterization is basically, to define how we will differentiate the two different services. So which in turn at the low level will map to the quality of service. So for me, the class of service is a concept which should be provided a differential service. Any question on this? I think this is the core of my whole of theme going forward, so I can take question over here.
No, I think
Are you there?
Get into the meat. If you can get into the meat of your proposal, I think that'll be great. I think we have a pretty good agreement on some of the problems with the existing class of service. So I think if we can move on to how you see resolving that, then that would be great.
Great. So as I said, the class of service is a differential concept, and it's a sort of a grading system. And the grading system cannot be unlimited. You cannot have unlimited grade within your system. You will always have, maximum A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, maximum those type of grades. So in my case, I'm just giving the grading like platinum, gold, silver, bronze, custom, and default. These are the well-defined, inbuilt, class of service available within us, and these should map to some of the high-level concepts which within the storage domain. Again, I'm saying when I'm talking all of it, it is corresponding to the storage domain. So if I say class of service may map to some other high-level concept which is called availability. So it means how we can provide a maximum availability. So it maps to the redundancy. All the components which basically map to availability should be redundant. That's what is the availability means, and we can go up to the 5.9, 7.9, and depending on the what type of redundancy we have, we can improve our it. So just to give an example, we have one of the parameter in our class of service or the vpool, which is called the max path, min path, initiators. Basically, if I have to map it into this concept, this is for redundancy. Your service will be available, your service will perform well. Second part is the response and throughput, which means if I am giving a service, the response should be best, throughput should be high. And in the application world, I have just captured one thing into the document. So at high level SLAs, I have to say that platinum is highest performance SSD volume designed for latency sensitive transaction workflow. This is what is by definition, and maybe the SLA will come with the metrics to say that less than 1 millisecond and 20,000 IOPS. So those type of things will come. Gold will be a general purpose SSD. So this is what is a concept means, and this is what I am trying to map into the well-defined parameters. So now coming to this, that each class of service will be mapped to some of the internal profiles. Okay, so this internal profiles is to the user, what will be exposed is just the class of service. Okay, and which will not be, the user will not be able to fine tune his parameter like path parameter, because once he says that my availability is 5.9, it's up to us to decide that how I can give him the 5.9 availability. If he says the performance should be high, throughput should be high, it's up to us to decide that how I can give him this type of thing, and that's what is called the internal profile. Internal profile is nothing but the parameters which we are putting into our vpool today, and this in turn somehow will be mapped to that, and we have to classify in such a way that they fall in one of these buckets, and then we do a discretization of those things. You can have high, low, medium, or default type of things. That's called a discretization. So it means I don't have to. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the words internal profiles in your slide. Are they the things across the top of this slide? Like, is there an availability internal profile and a performance internal profile and a protection internal profile and a replication internal profile? Or are they the things along the left? There's a platinum internal profile and a gold internal profile, or are they something different? I'm trying to understand what you mean by internal profile.
Yeah, internal profile is just like, we are creating a vpool definitions and exposing it to the external world. You define this parameter when you are creating it. It's one profile for the platinum, and we have so many parameters where we will define the range. Let's look at the Amazon Web Service. Amazon has a EBS as a web service, which is an elastic block service is there. And when they say that the platinum, gold, silver, the internal parameters which we are defining corresponding to that, it's not exposed to the external user. So same way here, the parameter is same, and those are hidden from the user, and we basically map those profiles to our vPool. So it's internal means it's same way, but it's some sort of a hidden in a file. Its file is internal to us. Does that answer, Tom?
No, I'm still confused about whether the profiles are bucketized by type of concern, like protection or replication, or whether they're bucketized by level of service, or whether I'm still confused about that.
Okay, I'll just give you an example of, let's say that you have to give a Platinum as a service. So there is a file corresponding to that. Suppose we call it Platinum profile, template or file, in which if I say that you have to give the availability of 7 nines. Now, for 7 nines of the availability, what all parameters which we are putting into our vPool today will map to that. Let's identify that. Now, I just gave an example, maybe the path preferences, number of initiators. That maps to that. So in that profile, we'll say number of path is equal to 8, number of initiator or host is equal to 2, something like that will be defined. We may define a range of that, and it can be between 2 to 4. So that's one. Then performance or response time. If it is a high response, high throughput, it means I need to have a storage which has a high grade SSD storage. So and it has to be a FC protocol. So that will define the profile, Platinum profile, where I'll say only take resources which are FC and which have the SSD. So again, it is internal, but in that profile, I'll say type of storage and type of protocol. Okay. Now protection is there. Now he says that I need to have this disaster risk recovery as a feature for Platinum profile. So in that case, okay, we have the technology called Vplex, which is a disaster recovery technology. So in that case, okay, protection, high availability through a Vplex metro. So that becomes a check mark for that. Just say, okay, we'll provide you high availability through the Vplex metro. Tomorrow, if we have one more technology for providing the high availability, maybe we'll say high availability, and the protection technology could be us. And then we have a grading. If Vplex is a better technology than other one, we'll say that in the Platinum, I will provide you the Vplex thing, in another, I will provide the other type of. RP, if you want to have the, real-time snapshots, point-in-time snapshot, RP is a technology. So if you want to have, point-in-time snapshot, we'll provide you the RPC. So again, we have this option into our profile, where it's a replication by point-in-time, and the technology is RP. So it's all what we are defining into the vPool today, and saying, let's hide it from the end user and say we have only 5 or 10 profiles. And if you are not comfortable with that, let's give him a custom profile where he can further, do this combination permutation of a different variable and define its own class of service.
Okay, so what I heard you define was a profile for Platinum. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think profile is for Platinum, there is a corresponding internal profile which we will not expose to the end user, or it's the admin only task. They configure once and forget time. Then we are just adhering to that profile definition and trying to, do our work in background so that we meet to that requirement.
Okay.
Right?
Thanks.
So, so this is a very core concept, and that's what I want if we have understood it correctly, and then I move forward. Good? Okay. So Gradually transition, I always saying that gradually transition. I think, Tom, you might have seen this architecture earlier also. I'm retaining that architecture where I'm trying to say that how we can invert the pyramid. So first problem was how to simplify our repool, and there we come up with the idea that let's restrict it to the B, just like a class of service, and that was a last concept. Now the how to invert the pyramid, which we have, the architecture pyramid, which was heavy at the core and very dumb at the edge. So it means that what we found that the controller is doing too much of the activity today, and it's important to see that the activities which it's doing, can we do outside controller those activities? So it means that we have to pull out those components which are which we can do outside controller. So the components which we found was one of them was a recommendation, which is equivalent to whatever we are doing at the placement and matching. Orchestration is again our coarse grained models, workflows within controller, and the controller means other are topology and other components which I have not worked on. So gradually we have to move that, and all the drivers somehow we have to move to the southbound SDK. So again, this is the architecture which is futuristic. Some of the components which we have attempted and try to do, I'll demoing it into. So let's look at it, the first component which we have worked on, which we have a working solution, is called the recommendation service. So this is what we call a new service or API. Means right now we have just implemented as another API within Viper, which basically means for pooling and selection of resources. So, so the input to this recommendation service is our class of service concept, which we have already discussed. That Platinum, so we will say that for this recommendation service, if I give my profile called Platinum profile, this should be able to tell me that what all the resources which will be best suited for doing this operation. So that's what is the whole idea of recommendation service. You give the class of service as an input, and you get the output in terms of what is the most recommended source for doing this operation. So that's what is that called recommendation resources to match class of service profile based on the best fit algorithm. And it can be further if we want to make this as a standalone big service, we can make it as just like a rule-based engine where we can define the rules, that affinity rule, placement rule, which can be recommended just like a rule engine where we can define full-fledged things, and this can be a very powerful service and can be used for topology and performance data from emit and SRM. So this is the concept which we are discussing for a long time, and how to integrate SRM and emit thing, and they have the plenty of data which will be useful for us. And I think the performance data which is which we use into the recommendation and our placement to find out which port is the least is the best suited for this operation. I think performance metrics can be pulled from the SRM and emit and do it. So again, I'm saying because once it becomes the external service, we have the capability to enhance our algorithms with more data. Going forward, I think next is the orchestration service. I think, Steve, you must be aware this same thing which we have talked about. It's basically extend the controller workflow with the model-driven orchestration service. Again, as I was saying that today the controller workflow is embedded within the controller service, directly, if you can make those controller workflow as model-driven service, and if it can be run outside the controller. So for the orchestration service, I think because once we have the capability to build the workflow, we need a graphical tool for modeling. Model defines the step of execution engine runs workflow, and we should be able to run workflow into the sync mode, async mode, and eventing type of mode. Keep execution step as generic as possible, and use standard as far as possible. The execution engine can be, very open source, flexible, extensible, lightweight. For this, we have a working solution, and for doing that, we have selected the tool for modeling called the BPMN modeler. BPMN is a W3C standard for defining the language of the workflow, and it's very, very comprehensive. It can handle any complex thing. So we for designing we use that, and for modeling of the workflow we use another open source tool called OS Workflow, which is a very lightweight, and it's almost extensible. Means you can extend the whole component of workflow to handle your requirement. And one of the things that this particular tool is being used extensively by some of the leading products like Altation, Mule. Mule is a ESB, and Service Mix is a service integrated product. They have the plugins available for OS Workflow. Going forward, I think the controller services, once we go to the controller service, I think the idea what we are saying that the controller service should be exposed as a granular task, and each task should have three basic functions: validate, execute, and rollback. And tasks should be stateless. So when I say stateless, we should make sure that we are not changing our state. So let's talk about this stateless task. As far as I'm saying, you give the input, it just execute the stuff. That's what is a stateless to me. And third thing which is important, as I said into the first slide, we have the actions embedded within the vPool. I think we need the capability to run actions on our resources. So for me, if I have created a volume and if I want to compress it, it's just the action on that particular resource. For that, I don't have to do any controller workflow per se, and this is the action. So actions has to be differentiated with the resource creation. And last part is, we have to see that if we have to create it into a uniform API way, everything should move to the southbound driver. So in this controller workflow, we have not done most of the tasks. We have just completed one of the things which is calling vFlex volume creation as a granular task. Rest of validate, execute, rollback is not done within that task, and we have not done anything onto the southbound driver side. Yeah.
I want to poke at stateless because you only spent about a sentence on that, and I didn't get a clear view. Can you clearly define what stateless means here?
So for me, the stateless means that we execute the operations given, okay, and we are not changing anything into our DB when that happens. That's not job of the controller. That's the job of the higher level services. So that's what I'm saying. When I say I cannot be 100% stateless system. So in that case, can I make my controller component stateless? And if I have to be stateful, can it be handled at the higher level? That's what is the concept of it. Can I make my controller stateless? It just execute the task which is supposed to do. but it doesn't change anything into DB. It doesn't do anything else.
Oh, so, okay, so I think I get it. So by stateless, these controller operations, they basically receive parameters. They take the parameters, they read the device state, they apply the parameters to change the device state in some way, and then they're done. And there's no database interaction at all, right?
Absolutely. I think that is the job, because there is a invoker of that task, and that should be available of whether task is successful, unsuccessful, and if it is successful, he should change that state.
And that
Okay,
invoker in your model is what? The orchestration service?
Yes. And I didn't get that question again. Could you repeat, please?
I said, so you said there's an invoker of that thing, and in your vision, the invoker you're referring to is some task within the orchestration service?
Yes, absolutely, yes. I'll come to that now. I think I'm done with my architecture changes, and as I said, we'll be demoing the vplex volume creation. So what all I'll be doing, we have a model for vplex volume creation, service orchestration based on the basic controller operations, what we'll be showing, deploying the workflow model into the catalog service, use class of service, which I am saying is our reference object is vpool, and resource boundary. I'm just naming it differently now that I'm not calling vpool as a vpool. I'm saying it's a class of service, and for me, the VRA is the resource boundary, which says that if I have to create a gold class of service, maybe we can define a resource boundary, which is a net connected resources, which may provide that. So it's just a concept. We are not changing that. For selecting the most suitable resources, execute operation using the basic controller, and we make sure that we don't use vpool and VRA at the lower level. And when we do all of it, we should make sure that normal Viper operation should continue. So we should be able to do all our normal the way we do it today, should not be impacted because we have changed something into background. So everything happened into the background. I'll take 4 more slides and then I'll jump to the demo. I think we have also looked at it, how we can, if we go with this approach, what is the upgrade consideration. I think what we wanted to do that, everything should be backwards compatible. So the new vpool, which is based on the profile, it can be used just like our normal vpool. We will keep all the API compatibility, whatever operations we are doing. APIs are not changing. We are just extending the same API to do extra work for us, and we are not changing any debug to do this work. All features will continue to work without disruption, so current behavior will be supported as it is, and architecture enhancement, whatever we are proposing, will be done into the parallel path, so we don't disrupt anything. And customer can adopt the new features, and gradually migrate to the simplified vpool. Coming back, if we do all of it, there are some nice side effects also. I think I need to mention that. Modularity and maintainability is definitely there. As we see that we invert the pyramid, every layer can be handled separately. Adding new features, yes, we can do. If we have to upgrade the driver, let's look at the driver upgrade only. Testability increases. I think this is a very important thing, and this has been talked about. Today, also, when I was developing my workflow through the model, and it was failing at different points, and I need to do the operation, one by one. And the way I have done it, I just bypass certain operations and do the step number 7 or step number 6 automatically. So I just change. Okay, rather than doing this step, I am giving the right input, run the steps 6, not start from the beginning. So that way the testability of your workflows increases, and we can simulate complex scenarios. I think this may be very useful into DODL thing. Emmet integration possible. And the last step, I think I need to mention that there was a discussion with Anil on that, but yes, I will say that ingestion will be a one-step process. Today we have the ingestion as a two-step process. I think by doing this, I can make ingestion as a one-step process and no V-pool assignment required for the new ingestion. That's what is assigned. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm just jumping back to the now. And this is the summary of whatever I have talked about. Now, I think better I go to the our. So I'll first start with the V-pool simplification. So if we see that we have created the two V-pools. Any question before I go with that, or I continue with the demo?
Please continue.
Okay. Okay. So I have created a two V-pool called gold V-pool and the silver V-pool. I'm primarily using the gold V-pool and I'm just doing that. And if you see that in this gold V-pool, I have only just one definition called FC. I can live without that also, but just to make sure I explain the concept, I put a property called FC as a hardware, and we are going to use this V-pool for Vplex orchestration. And if you see that in this, I don't have any option for doing the Vplex local and distribution. So it's complete vanilla, simple V-pool, which I am calling it as a good V-pool, right? Now, we have created another thing which is called workflow designer. I have a workflow which has been modeled for Vplex volume LITE. I'm calling it create Vplex volume. This is how my workflow look like. So if you see that in the Vplex volume creation, we have the multiple tasks to be done. One is the first, create a site one volume, export the site one volume, create the site two volume, export the site two volume, and then using all this information, we have to create a Vplex volume. So, and in the front end, we have a service called recommendation service, which takes the input of the class of the gold class as an input, and then automatically identify full characteristics for doing this operation end to end. Okay, if I have to show you my recommendation service looks like this. I just again, this is a simple POC. So I just wrote one more parallel service called recommendation service, which basically takes the parameter called class of service. This is a profile which I have created, and once I have done it, I just send it to the service, and I got an output of creating this volume. So it says for creating the site one volume, this is the input. For creating a site two volume, this is the input. And creating a Vplex volume using this is the input. And once that is come, that's what is the input coming out of this recommendation service, which is fed into my orchestrator, and then it start executing one by one. So we have the capability of our editing this workflow. I can modify this workflow and create a new workflow. Suppose I want to do the same volume to do a RP protection. I just write RP and just change this to this. Just change it to this. Make it good. And yes. So this is all possible. Just save it and execute it. I'm not saving it right now. I'm just showing it. Once we do that, we have an option to deploy. Basically, automatically we create the service, test the service, and deploy the service. And as soon as we deploy, we go to the catalog service. In the catalog service, we have created a new category called model-driven workflow, which is come. So here is the model-driven orchestration service. I have created the 3 services using our modular, and one is called the vanilla volume service. So we want to verify that our existing work can we modify or can we move our existing service to the model-driven service. So this is just a plain vanilla system. This is another service called LITE. In this, I just use my profiles and recommendation service to create the same Vplex volume. And this is my Vplex volume creation service. When I launch this, I have a form to input the parameters. I just, do this, create demo TST as a volume, size 2 GB. And here is the important thing, when you are creating, that's the core concept, that's all our inputs. But the thing is, now when we have created the platinum profile, the idea is that he has the options to have a protected volume by Vplex. So in that case, if it is a class of services platinum or the gold, which has this profile called Vplex profile, then only this option will be visible to the user, otherwise it will be disabled. So that's where the platinum user can use any service which will have the protection by Vplex also. But if the same service is if he's creating a service called he has a profile called bronze, in this will be grayed out. Okay, so once we did this, and just order it and start executing. I'm not sure it will execute now or not, but let's see. So once it is executed, we can see that in the background we have started executing that as a workflow, and I think it will take some time. But just now I have created another workflow called just before that I have created. So once I have created it, we can go to our resources, and in the resources I can see all the volumes which has been created. It has created the Type 1 volume, your normal volume, Type 2 volume.
So I'm confused about something. You said the controller things didn't update the database. So who's updating the database to put these in the database based on your workflow?
No, Tom, I have not. That's the futuristic thing. That's at first I said that everything within the controller is not what I have told is done. So I've just made
you tie together, make a volume, export it, and then the import volume into Vplex. Is that what you've tied together?
Yes. So basically the Vplex.
Operation?
Yes. So I'll go back again here. The Vplex modeler. Today, if you see,
I want to know what the underlying operations in the controller in that workflow are. Did you add new operations in the controller, or are you using those existing ones?
We just use the existing one. So if you see that the last part, today this workflow is completely as a one workflow into controller, okay, which is exposed as a Vplex volume creation. We have, make this as a model-driven workflow, and we found that in the Vplex volume creation, it's a multi-step process, which which does all these tasks, individually, and finally it creates the reflex volume. What we have done within that, we have made this particular task as a single task, which we call that atomic task for that. So as a reflex volume creation, I just need to say that I will give you all other things. You just do your task to create a HA volume for me. Is it
okay? I think that's clear.
Yes. So if you see that all those 4 operations in the HA volume, I am passing the parameters which is required to create the HA volume. This is what is the volume ID 1 and volume for HA. Right?
So Manoj, the final step, which is the create reflex volume, right? Right now we don't have a API which supports it, right? So did you end up creating a new API for this create reflex volume?
No. That's what I said, that we are keeping all the backward compatibility between the current API, and we are just extending it to do extra operations for us. So we have not created any API for this.
There actually is a take volumes and make reflex volume.
Yeah, so if you see that, we have extended it to take the extra parameters, and we use those extra parameters to do a provisioning.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
okay.
That's fine.
Right? Yeah. I think this is all I have. I am ready to fire with the questions.
Hi, this is Hui speaking. I have 2 comments. Please go back to our slides, page 12, about orchestration.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. First comment is BPMN. You're right that it is a very comprehensive standard, but please note it is also a heavyweight framework. It has 2 lot of things. We don't need them at all.
Yeah, if I say that BPM is a very comprehensive standard, and it's up to you, how much you are adopting it. And we are not creating a BPMN per se workflow engine. So I think it's important for me to share my yesterday's presentation. I think this is what is my current presentation for. This is how we are doing it. So if you see that if you are trying to create a real workflow visualization, BPM is the way to go, because it has all the construct which is required. Like if you want to have a workflow, sub-workflow, a user-driven task, or a script task, it has a full definition of that. But at the same time, we are using it for the presentation layer. But as the execution layer, if you look at it, we are not working with the BPM directly. We are mapping that BPM to our internal orchestration engine, which is called a workflow model. So there is 2 different models, and we will have an adapter which basically can convert BPM to voice workflow and vice versa. And that's what we are doing.
By default, OS workflow cannot consume the output of the BPM modeler. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it cannot, but as I said, the OS workflow is very, very extensible, and we can extend it to take the workflow into the BPMN format and convert it into their own format. And that's possible, and that's what we are doing.
Can you describe your experience so you showed us running this workflow, and that, it was obviously well integrated into the service catalog, and it looked good as far as consistency with the rest of Viper. But I think when we touched base a few months ago and sort of tried to leverage the BPMN tools, I think what is it, Activity, or what's the front end piece that you used when designing your workflows?
So front-end piece, BPMN is just a visualization layer as far as open source is concerned, and this is called the BPMN.io.
Right.
I don't know. Just give me a minute. So that's only the visualization layer. It is not having any inbuilt engine within that. Rather, they expect that somebody else will provide an engine for those BPMN workflow. But they have gone ahead and also integrated with one of the most popular BPMN workflow engine called Activity. But again, when I was doing my investigation for this work, I found that definitely that's very, very complex and we don't need it. And when we look at it, we found the OS workflow is very much flexible and it meets our requirement. But I didn't find any tool which basically work both of them together. We can create a very good visual a modeling tool, and we can do a simple orchestration engine. There are no such tools, so that's why we split the problem into two independent components, which one is called the modeling, another is called the execution, and we use the MVC principle to integrate the two together, and this is how our things look at it. Now, it's up to me that today if I want to baseline my presentation model as BPMN, I have that capability. Or if I say that, no, we will not work with the BPMN model, we will work with the OS workflow as a base model, I'll work, expose that as a external world, and BPN will be internal. It's up to us to decide. And when I am developing this tool, I am also developing it to independent way and doing a manual conversion with some automation done in place.
For OS workflow, I don't like this project as well. So we look at what kind of third-party open source project we use the web controller. We have paid a lot of price to maintenance, fix bugs, lot of price on the maintenance of third-party product. Like Cassandra Zuki, we fix a lot of bugs, a lot of things we need handled. If you look at OS workflow, it is not a very active project. It is not mature enough. So BPMN is very complicated.
Look at it,
OS workflow is not mature. So if we base our orchestration engine on these two things, I have some concerns about the quality.
Well, and the other thing I would like to know. Go ahead, Manoj. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying, I'll again say that let's not get confused that, we are trying to overlap with the Mozart as a project. We are not. We are saying that this was a concept which was, we started long back. Rather, when there was a hackathon thing happen, at that time I have done some work into the customization of the catalog service, which demonstrated to the Manuvir, so many other guys, and they said, why not you extend it to the controller, to do some, customization of the controller services, and that's where we start looking at how we can do it. And but at the same time, the thing is, with what is our aim is, how to make our controller lightweight, or the Viper lightweight, which the problems which we are trying to face today, handle it that. If we have a better technology for the orchestration engine or the visualization, I think we should use that. There is nothing to say that, Manoj has done a POC and that's what is a standard. No. But at the same time, what I found that we should not create our own workflow engine, because it's a technology which needs some efforts. Even the visualization needs some effort, and we should find the right sources, open sources, to do that. That's what is my recommendation.
in general, I agree with you. Yeah, if we can reuse some open material, so higher quality open source project, we can do it. But we can, if we cannot find such kind of things, we need to do it by ourselves.
Okay. Well, I think so. So you expressed an opinion on workflow based on the activity of the project tree. Manoj, I want to get your opinion on BPM-NIO, the brief examination we did of it. Trying to design a workflow in it. I think we would not describe as an easy and intuitive experience in terms of how you went about configuring it. Did you find it to be so, and we missed something, or in other words, did you find designing workflows using?
I have worked on the activity long time back. When first time when I did the POC on the customization of the catalog services, if you remember correctly, we have used the activity as a external workflow engine where we want to integrate with them. So we have developed a simple workflow for activity, but I think you are right. Activity is very heavyweight, but they are very comprehensive, and they are following the standard of the BPMN, and they are not just the workflow; they are the modeling, business process modeler, which is much more than workflow. Yeah, well, I agree. I agree for that.
Okay, so let's take a step back for a minute. And so you've embraced three things that are definite pain points for Viper right now, right? The current service catalog is inflexible and doesn't allow you to do ad hoc orchestrations of any kind. And so addressing that is I think we all agree, is something that needs to be done. You tackled some of the problems that are inherent in our current vPool and the way their separation of concerns has been sort of eroded over time to the point that it really doesn't exist anymore, and some possible solutions to that. And then you sort of touched on this leveraging the new orchestration capability to break apart some of what's in the controller right now and tease it apart and simplify that, I guess, into a more move from a CISC model to a RISC model, as it were, for the controller service, and let the orchestrator pick up some of the slack. So I think you've done a lot of good work here. I think the key things are, what are our takeaways for the moment? And so, I think we definitely have on the slate for Anakin, or at least certainly one of the things PM is pushing for in Anakin, is an orchestration solution. And obviously we're pushing for some sort of solution to the problems and complexity of V-arrays and vPools. I'm not sure whether we have appetite for tearing apart controller service, although you made the point that it could be a iterative process, I guess. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what was the whole idea. As I said, that anything cannot happen into Viper, as a rip-off type of thing. But we have shown that how gradually we can migrate to the architecture correction which is needed. If we don't have that mindset, I definitely feel that all the efforts to do a vPool simplification and addressing the other things, based on my analysis, will be very difficult to achieve. And that's what I'm saying. If we agree that this is how we have to achieve, I think timeline is what we have to discuss, and how we have to do it, we have to discuss. But for me, I think that concept is very important, that how we will do it.
Okay, so in terms of the orchestration piece, it doesn't sound like you're giving a full endorsement to necessarily the specific technology choices you had there. You were simply saying, hey, we need an orchestration capability. I like the idea of following standards, and so that's kind of what led you to BPMN. But it sounds like you're not really saying these are necessarily the right choices for technology. Is that?
No. I think definitely not. This is a POC, and if you have a better solution, I think definitely we should support that. And it is nothing like Manoj versus others. Definitely the right technical choices with discussions has to be done. But the thing which I said, in my orchestration engine, that we need a graphical tool if we want to create a workflow. And without that, writing XML, if you ask customers to write it, definitely not good. And
agree 100% on that. I think making people write XML or write JSON or write whatever to design workflows is not going to be the way to impress our customers. And so I think we're in 100% agreement there. I mean, I can let Steve jump in if he wants to, but I think, we were excited sort of when we initially, got in some connection with the work that you were doing there and said, hey, we have these standards. Let's see what the state of the tools are. And so we took a look at some of the same ones you did, a few others, and ended up completely frustrated with the state of their ability to work together or be simple or whatever. And so I think that's kind of when Project Mozart kind of said, well, we can use some pieces that are open source, but we don't see any whole tools or combinations of tools that will give us the user experience we want and the supportability we want. So Steve, do you have anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, that's basically what we found. We liked the idea of using the standards as long as it gave us, components that are easily kind of replaceable or some flexibility to change those. So if we had a modeling tool that could turn out a standard like BPMN and then a workflow engine that could just suck that in, that made sense. But yeah, the complexity of, the notation language meant that, we had to customize the tool pretty heavily in order to make it look good, at least in the UI. For an end user, and then we need to store some sort of consistency.
I will add, Steve. I think for that, actually we have looked at it. It's quite not as complex as you're saying. And the thing is, as I said, that BPMN is a very comprehensive tool, and it's up to you to, when you are customizing this, it's up to you what you expose to the end user. So very important thing into the tool will be the property panel. Once we have given that, we'll have our own task which is visible to that. He will just drag and annotate it with the right things. It will be, once the tool is done completely end to end, it could be very simple. It looks complex today, but I can say that with the effort of 2-3 weeks time, it can be simplified. But at the same time, and the backend side, I will definitely like to be flexible. If there is a better orchestration engine which can meet our requirement, I'll not say just the requirement from the catalog service point of view. We have to also look at that. If we tomorrow want to make our controller workflow flexible, how we will do that work. I think that should be the one more criteria when we are selecting this tool.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I do think also we should look at the users of this system, because I think we've also got two different major users. One is the workflow developer who's creating workflows in the controller, and that's a pretty technical, low-level effort. And then we may have also users wanting to, make their own services up in the catalog who won't have that kind of depth. So we've got two different users too.
That's what is my disagreement. I think that's what I was saying, that in a long run, I think why a controller should have the workflow if we have the capability to create the workflow into the catalog itself. Service, if we are exposing everything as a service, a controller workflow should become redundant. And that's, again, it's a long-term thing. So all our controller workflow, whatever we are doing, we should be able to model it into the catalog service. And those will be our bundled workflow, and the custom workflow is those workflow which customer will create on his own.
Sure. I think we definitely agree that there should be bundled workflows and the ability for individual customers to create their own. And there's also even been discussion about, having a marketplace of sorts where people could exchange workflows that they've written for particular tasks and share them. So
Yes.
Okay. So TSC folks, do we have additional questions for Manoj or for Steve, either about workflow topics or in Manoj's case about any of the other, I mean, there were really, as I saw it, at least 3 different areas that were kind of encompassed by what he was talking about during his presentation. So do we have more input we need on any of that?
So I'm back to stateless. Your proof of concept didn't really demonstrate stateless. If you were to add, if you were to try and make your proof of concept stateless, meaning you went into the controller service and maybe cloned the operations or took the operations that we have, got rid of the database references, then my question is, how would you handle state in this workflow or higher level that you're doing today? Got any thoughts on that?
Tom, it will be too early to say that, but at the same time, I have some ideas. As I said, that you yourself said that controller is just a task. It takes the input, execute the things, and the response of those tasks will be sent back to the invoker of that task. In our case, that invoker could be the catalog service or the API service, which will give the output of another invoker or the app. Let's say that is a catalog service. So in the catalog service, then we have to handle it in such a way that we update our resources at that time when the operation is successful. Our operation is failed, we have to just roll back the task which we have done, and the task is intelligent enough to say that it's some sort of a commit log type of thing. If you see in the DBs, they don't flush the transaction unless it is successful, and they create some sort of a commit log, and then later on they run that commit log. So we should have the similar way to identify that if I have to roll back the operation, he should have all the things which he had done, create a commit log type of thing and give that as a rollback operation. So if I say that you are unsuccessful, just roll it back. So
okay, so I heard a transactional database, which I get. My next question, though, is there's bound to be some business logic somewhere. Does that go? Where does that go in your workflows? In other words, I don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, I think I don't have a right answer right now. I have to think about it. Definitely, I feel that at the controller layer, I think when I say that it is just a task executor, and definitely there will be a higher level, and if it needed, maybe we may have to introduce another service which says, which just interact with these operations. So I'm not, saying that I have solved that problem right now, but there is definitely a desire to do it that way. The 2 parts I want to say that, we cannot make every operation stateless. That's very much true, that in a complex distributed system, making everything stateless is just a dream. So, but at the same time, it's definitely possible to say that certain components are always stateless, and then the stateful part is handled at the higher level. So this is definitely a design concept. I don't know how to do it right now into our controller, and once I have that clarity, I'll look at it and get back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay.
I have one more question about the V-pool simplification. So,
yeah.
In your previous demo, you bring up a page about V-pool. So, is that the result after the simplification, or is not a part of your demo?
I think it's the refactoring of our current concept of the V-pool and saying that, we are creating, rather than V-pool, we are creating a grading of the service, which is in terms of, some well-known profiles. And at the same time, I can allow a customer to create some more profiles. But I'm sure that, when you are trying to grade a service, definitely somebody will not go to the 100 profiles or 200 profiles. It will be always 10 to 15 profile max, and each profile should be unique in itself. It's not it's a refactoring of our current V-pool, which I'll say that way.
So those concepts, I totally agree. That's very good. And I'm just wondering what it will look like from the end user perspective. Just for information, we are not V1 product. We need to think about the compatibility for the user experience compatibility for existing customers. We cannot bring too many new concepts to our current domain model. And we have V-pool, have V-array. If we are going to introduce the COS or profile to our domain model, we need to think about the impact. So that's my point, just for information.
Yeah, but if you see that in my slide deck, and I have said that there is a upward upgrade consideration was there. It was on the slide number 15. One thing which we have done, we are always trying to keep a backward compatibility, and that's what current V-pool can be used as it is. And these will be some of the special V-pools which we will create. We can name it differently, and which will be mapped to the internal profile. And if you can see that today, when I was showing the demo, the my V-pool definition looks very simplified, but still it is working with the existing API. So we are keeping all the API compatibility. So that way, I think the migration definitely, if we keep that in mind, whenever we are doing these changes, it's possible.
Okay, thanks. Can you forward your slides to us so that I can take a further look offline, understand your proposal about the V-pool? Your slides just showed is that okay? Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be sharing the slides, and we can go over it through email, or I can have a follow-up discussion.
Yep, thank you very much.
So one more point which I went, because these were some of the different concepts, and it was very difficult to gauge that how much changes it may cause. And we have gone ahead and experiment before putting it on the paper. And it seems that it's feasible if we have a long-term vision how we want to achieve it. I think it's definitely feasible over a period of time to do it.
Yeah, got it.
And that's what was the POC for.
Okay. Anything else from Manoj before we wrap up?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manoj. Much appreciate the time and energy you put into this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manoj. Good presentation.
Thank you. I'll be sharing that with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.